Hello and welcome to a special B3 podcast this week. Last weekend, me and Dan visited the PC Gamer Weekender event in Londinium town.
We did indeed.
And played many games. Dan went both days, Saturday and Sunday. I was just there on a Sunday, being a bit of a videographer, filming a few bits. So we're just going to give a quick rundown of the event and the games that we played.
That makes a lot of sense. There were a few other members of the team there as well, which was pretty cool. A couple of these games I didn't play, but then I think you played them, and I know a little bit about some of the ones that neither of us got hands on with. So yeah, let's give this a go.
Let's just go. We're going to go through in alphabetical order from the top. Right. So first we've got Anger Force Reloaded. You must have played this on Saturday because I didn't see this one.
Yeah, I did indeed. So this was a little. Vertical shooter where you could play as one of several kind of heavily stylized characters, each of them with very different move sets. It's by Screenbox Studio. I think it's already out, if I remember correctly. And yeah, no, it was just a really fun little shooter. I did have some trouble with the controls because there was at no point were there actually instructions on which button was the shoot button. But once I got over that, it was quite fun actually. The bosses were pretty cool. They were multi-tiered. They had multiple stages to them. But yeah, just a nice little fun shooter. Good music, good sound, good visuals.
Awesome. Sounds cool. So next up we've got Anwin, The Otherworld. I watched you play this. It was rather interesting. I'm not sure how early it is because it didn't seem like there was much to it.
I believe that was the demo that they've currently got out on itch.io that was set up and running. So this is from Quantum Soup. This was the tribute to, although he admitted it was heavily borrowing from, Sentinel.
Yeah, Jeff Crammon's Sentinel, yes.
Yes, which you, as the master of all things old, will know was a game about things. So I actually quite enjoyed playing this, and I went off and I played the demo at home afterwards as well.
Awesome.
Where I did vastly better than I did at the show. And so, as is with the original game, there is a sentinel watching from the highest point on the map. They kind of spin around on the spot, casting their gaze around, and you're a kind of being of energy, and you can transfer energy into things and remove energy from things, and that energy doubles as your life source or your life power.
Hold on, Dan. No, don't worry. Right, carry on. Sorry, I'll cut that.
That's fine. And that energy doubles as your life power. So what you do is you absorb up some trees and some rocks and stuff, because rocks have more energy in them than trees. I've not quite figured that out and how that works mentally, but so you absorb that and then you pump that into new tiles, and you have to look at the ground. That's definitely part of the key mechanics of it.
Yeah.
You look at the ground, the flat of the tile, and you pump energy into it, and once you've put a certain amount in, you start building these totems. And they come in varying heights as well, and height is the most important bit, really, I suppose, in this game, because what you're trying to do is work your way around this island, not be spotted by this giant sentinel, not have any of your previous totems spotted by it either, because it will try and sap the energy, and that means you can't turn around and sap the energy yourself. Yeah. And you're just trying to get higher than that sentinel so you can see the ground that it's standing on, and you can absorb it, and as such win the level. If it can't see the tile that you're on, but it can see you, it will send out these little hounds, which can eviscerate you as well, but you can eviscerate them if you are quicker. And that's really the core loop of it, but
Yeah, like you said, the whole being able to see the tile is very important, because obviously you can be on a tile and you can clearly see the watcher or the sentinel can see you, but if he can't see that tile, he will just kind of ignore you.
So not only do you have to get even to the sentinel, but you have to be close as well. So you have the perspective looking down at the tile of it, so you can drain or build near it. And then as well as that, you obviously want to keep the focus up, so that you can build taller than it, so you've got that angle so you've got a greater angle, but there is always a ticking time because its eye, I suppose, is sweeping around. Exactly. Really interesting idea, as with the original, I suppose. And yeah, it was just quite fun.
Yeah, it does look interesting. I'll have to give the demo a go, I think, at some point. Next up, we've got Basingstoke by Puppy Games.
I've never been to Basingstoke, but I've heard that it's horrible.
Yeah, well, this game looks accurate from what I remember. But I mean, yeah, this game looks. I didn't get a chance to play it. I know you've had a go, but it looks interesting, and it's a very much a departure from the stuff they've done before.
Yeah, although it's definitely got the
neon kind of retro games. They've gone full 3D, dark, survival horror kind of, not survival horror, but a survival kind of game, haven't they?
I think survival horror is probably a good way, like the classic survival horror mechanics of not having much, but needing a lot to survive, and so sometimes it's just better to get out of the way. Is definitely in here. It's not a twin stick shooter because ammo is limited, and many times it's easier to distract a zombie or the strange aliens that are infecting people by lobbing a kebab or a sausage roll at it than it is to try and face them all down with a fire extinguisher or a homemade, flamethrower with a deodorant can and a lighter. And the game does a lot of interesting stuff, like there's one-way doors. So if you go through one of those, you might find yourself in an alleyway and you've completely, buggered yourself, as it were.
And cut yourself off from the going back and things. Yeah.
That's it. And you've got things like there's laser pens, or your torch has got limited battery in it. But when you've got that on, you can identify when objects are lootable a lot quicker. But obviously enemies can see you. So there's a lot of very clever stuff there. And yeah, I just enjoyed it. My main concern with it, and my only real concern with it, I suppose, is the length of the game, because it very much felt like I was going through a level, it finished, going through a level, it finished, and I got through 3 or 4 levels in my time there, and I don't know how long that game goes on for, but it was enjoyable.
But is it procedurally generated, or is it just level based?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I think the best example, what I imagine structurally it to be like is probably Left 4 Dead, wherein some elements are moved around, but ultimately you're getting from point A to point B.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's just they are a certain distance away, and things that are in the way may change around. But I may be wrong. It could be completely rigid. But I don't know. I did have some moments, because obviously it's not early in development, but it's going to be launched in a few months, and they've been working on it, and they're still bug fixing, and they're still tweaking things. I did have a bit of an issue wherein I was picking up objects and it wasn't immediately obvious what they were doing. They all had descriptions on them, but you pick up an iron bar and it's actually a crafting item. It could do with a crafting icon on it in order to, make it stand out that that's what it's for, and that you can't, hit enemies with it. When there are melee weapons in the game, I did find one. I found a police baton. But yeah, so possibly elements like that, but that will come up in the beta testing, and I'd imagine, because they've run a very clever campaign wherein their patrons have had kind of early access to the game, so they are almost certainly getting a constant degree of feedback from their dedicated fans, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. I'm certainly looks like one to watch.
Yeah.
So next up we've got Biomutant by Experiment 101, and being published by THQ Nordic. I did play this one. It was one of the very few that I did play.
Talk.
And it was interesting. It was the first time they showed off the new character creator, so that was quite interesting. You play as like Rocket Raccoon, basically, from Guardians of the Galaxy is what you play as.
That's it.
And my guy was bright hot pink, and he had ridiculously long ears, because that's kind of what I like. And then, basically, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what to compare it to. Overall, I mean, it's a third-person action adventure game.
Yeah,
I suppose. And you get...
it looks like a corridor shooter. Like, on the PS2, there were loads of them. You're just in a room and you've got to kill all the enemies, and there are some items and stuff, and then you go on. It's just got a lot of the modern conventions, like crafting and picking up bits and bobs, and learning new abilities as you go.
Yeah, see, that was the cool thing. So every now and again, you shot a particular enemy, and you'd kind of absorb them into yourself, and then that had put an extra ability on. I think you pulled the left trigger and then pressed one of the 4 buttons. And it was, I don't know, it almost kind of worked like Zelda, where you could put your different abilities on your different buttons. So, I was growing mushrooms that I could bounce on to make myself climb higher. One of the ones that would make me float and sort of glide down with sort of wing kind of things. But yeah, it's kind of weird. So one button you've got like a massive, I had a giant sword that even Cloud from Final Fantasy would have struggled to pick up. And yeah, some assault rifle on the other button, and yeah, it was very fluid. You could sort of double jump and shoot, and then flip backwards and slice this with your sword, and yeah, all very fluid. It was quite nice.
They've used the word kung fu to describe it, and
yes.
While
that would be accurate.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain kind of fidelity and finesse to it. All of the diving around and the dodging, and I know obviously kung fu people regularly associate with obviously the fighting, but we have these kind of martial arts films from the last 2 or 3 decades wherein people just whip out a machine gun and then someone jumps out of the way and picks something up and throws it at someone. Yeah. There's these big, like heavily choreographed.
That kind of crazy flipping and gunplay and all that kind of stuff.
That's it.
One thing I didn't like, I'll bring this up. One thing I didn't like, there was a stupid narrator, and he wouldn't shut up, and he had a really grating voice all the way through it. And it seemed to be at the beginning like it was a kind of tutorial kind of thing. It was like, do this, do that, but then it was kind of like he started to tell the story and breaking the fourth wall and things like that. And I don't know, I think it's either going to grow on me and I'm going to really like it, or I'm going to get irritated with it very quickly and want to turn it off.
Maybe you can turn it off.
Hopefully. Because, at first when I thought it was a tutorial, I was like, okay, this is fine. But then he started commenting on other things, and it makes me think it's going to be there all the time.
I mean, sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's a bit much. I mean, the game has that, obviously, that, I suppose, kung fu, that fluid combat, but it's also got comic book aesthetics to it as well. With the shooting, the whole kind of bang and words come off of the weapons and stuff. So the narrator does make a degree of sense, but it'd be a shame if it was let down by something like that.
Mm. The only game I've actually enjoyed for the narrator was Stanley Parable. That's because it was the whole point.
I thought you were going to say the Bard's Tale.
I don't know. Bard's Tale had a couple of good moments, but most of the time it sounded really forced.
Okay, fair.
In my opinion, but there you go.
That's fine. It is hard to do narrators correctly, especially when it's narrators commenting on real-time stuff. I'm struggling to remember the name of a game where I really had trouble with the narrator. Manuel Samuel. That grated at times as well, the narrator.
Yeah, I think that's why I stopped playing that as well.
There we go. We hate being told what to do.
Well, it is that, yeah. Everyone does. Right, so next we've got Candleman, the complete journey, developed by Spotlighter Interactive and being published by Zodiac Interactive. I didn't see this one then. No, I did see it. You were actually a candle, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Ergo Candleman. I mean, yeah. No, I enjoyed this. So it was a little exploration puzzle. It had, I think Dan O'Reilly put it quite well when he stated that it had visual similarities to Little Nightmares, because it had this kind of distant camera, and it was a very dark and, I suppose, scary, really, or daunting world. So you play this little candle on a little one of those candle holders, I guess it's called.
I'm guessing the whole point is to not get put out.
Well, no. You choose when you light your own wick.
Ah, fair enough.
Which sounds like a euphemism. But yeah, so you choose when to light your own wick. And obviously when you do that, you can see all around you. But the problem is, you're a candle. So the longer that wick is on, the more you burn down. And if you run out of wax, you're dead. Ah,
so it's almost like a resource management kind of thing. It's like
very much so. It's very clever. And so as you go through each of the different little story sections, which are all brilliant, I'll get to the kind of visual, what I loved about the visuals in a bit, but as you do that, there are candles hidden around as well, that when you go up close to, you can light them by lighting yourself. And that's kind of the point of the game, really, to go around these levels to find these candles that are hidden away in the darkness and light them up, and then get through the level. Each of the levels are really cool because you're just a little tiny candle toddling around. There's that whole kind of miniature, I guess-ness to it. So everything in the world is big. So right, gotcha. there was one where you're in a library, and so you're literally walking along on the top of these books, loads and loads of books stacked high, impossibly high, not going to happen in real life.
Yeah.
And big old cargo boxes, and another level you're inside a ship, and so there's kind of steering wheels and cogs and pulleys and things turning, and it just looks really lovely and fluid. Really love the visual styling of it, and obviously the fact that you are actually kind of sacrificing your own health, as it were, to push back the darkness and not lose a life by jumping and missing something. Pretty cool.
Awesome. The name of it is called Castleman: The Complete Journey. Is this like a package of different? Have they had versions out before, or is that just what they've called it?
I believe that there were. I'm going to have to look that up now. Terribly unprofessional of me. One moment. In short, I don't know.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it's...
okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Very cool.
I don't know. So we'll move on. Deep Rock Galactic. Now, I know Sean played this for a long time. He was gushing about it.
He was, which is good. It's good. It's a really good game. I saw it while I was out in Hovde in Sweden late last year. Hovde. Yeah. It's good. And... it's by Ghost Ship Games, and it's published by Coffee Stain Publishing, the people who did Goat Simulator and those other games, which I think were tower defense games.
Yeah.
And it's following the formula of Left 4 Dead, which I think we all have to admit by now is definitely a subgenre.
Even though I've never played it.
Yeah, but there's so many games out there now that are like 4-player co-op versus the world work together, and I think that's really cool. With this, it's space miner dwarves with laser guns and cannons and robots and destructible environments and caves that are generated when you start the level, and just loads and loads of alien beasties.
Sounds good.
It's very cool, and so in many ways it kind of channels that Aliens, that's in the second movie, style of there are so many enemies. We have these non-conventional weapons, I suppose, while also having this odd kind of like your own progress through the maps, and the maps are different each time. So it builds, in my opinion, on a lot of the stuff that Left 4 Dead did right, and there's a reason why. People are so awkward to compare games to Left 4 Dead, and it's because, like many Valve games, it kind of came out of nowhere, and it did it so well that to compare another game to it, you're comparing to a high bar. But Deep Rock Galactic, and I suppose, which we'll get to later, Vermintide, do build on a lot of those elements and build on it well. It's got a lovely kind of slightly low poly art style to it as well, which, in my opinion, always ties in fantastically to destructible environments. And yeah, I've really enjoyed what I've seen of it. It's launching soon as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to get on that. Get a team together. And
100%. Most definitely.
So next up, we've got Empires Apart.
Hey! You're the funny one.
By a Destiny bit and being published by Slytherin. But that's basically what this is, isn't it? It's a reworking of that kind of genre. It's
I think that's how most people will. Yeah, I think most people will would have turned around anyway, and said, "Hey, this looks like Age of Empires." But what with the fact that Age of Empires 1 remaster was announced, and then obviously Age of Empires 4 on the horizon.
Yeah, well, that was there, wasn't it? The HD one was at PC Gamer.
It was indeed, yeah. So I think what with that now in people's consciousness, it does, it is going to get that comparison very quickly. I don't think that's going to be a negative, because when people start looking deeper into Empires Apart, they'll see that actually the game is, while it might be pitched as a reinvention of RTS, it's definitely a kind of refinement of the competitiveness of StarCraft 2, and obviously the fondly remembered Age of Empires. So there's a lot of StarCraft 2 players, there are some competitive StarCraft 2 players who don't quite like StarCraft 2, but it's the competitive scene, so you're gonna get a proper match there. Like how there's probably a lot of people who absolutely loathe Dota and League of Legends and Overwatch who play it because in their mind there is no alternative.
Yeah, there probably is that. Yeah.
So a lot of feedback from those people has been taken on board in making Empires Apart, and what we've got is we've got a game that has 6 different factions in them, which each have a key mechanic that is vastly different than one another. But multiplayer matches can be played cooperatively as well, so you can have 4 versus 4.
Awesome.
Of the 6 factions, they each have different kind of slight tweaks. I think they're called loadouts. I checked my notes now, but I haven't actually got them anywhere around here. But so a group that are normally particularly good at defense, or particularly good at, I suppose, should probably use the proper words for it. So kind of, there are different play styles in RTS, and you've got things like shock and stuff like that. Shock and rush, etc. And there are tweaks to them which allow them to be used in one or another, which means that, say for instance, the Mongolian faction can just, their ability is that they can just pack up their town hall, move it somewhere else, reopen it, and then obviously they can then build around that area as well. So they're very good when playing support, for instance, at actually just building a whole bunch of defensive buildings along a front line that hasn't properly been formed yet. While playing offensively, they could set up an area that just spams out loads of units and then move to another place where they can start acting supportive, I suppose, to the other people on their team. So it's a really interesting offering. The guy that I spoke to, who's behind it, and obviously it's indicated in a lot of their developer diaries as well, they're very keen on it going on and becoming a kind of live product, I suppose, if it launches well.
Just keeping it updated and...
Yeah, so he wasn't afraid to say, right now we could talk about kind of 20 different ideas for factions, we could talk about different map types, we could talk about different this and that, because it's all been discussed. But obviously what they have at the minute is this fine streamlined refinement of
they need to get the core
idea
out first before they can start looking about. I love the art style of this though. This is what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago.
You were.
With that flat shaded polygon look.
Yeah, the low polygon art
flat
style.
shaded, and it looks gorgeous because it is so clean.
It's clean and it's stylized as well. And let me tell you something without sounding like I'm on QVC. And let me tell you one more thing about this as well that will surprise you. It's all object physics based in the game. So in like Age of Empires, if you were done with a unit, you could press delete and it'd just fall over and die.
Yeah.
So they've obviously put that in here as well. But if you do it on the buildings, they rupture into
and crumble. Yeah, I saw
into
that.
fractions. Yeah. So if you are kind of done with your wall, then you can double click that and hit delete, and it just all goes off everywhere, and it's cool. I think because I spent so long playing these kind of projected 3D, these 2D games, I still find it really cool when something just acts independently, isn't a drawing, isn't an animation. So seeing my little scout being chased off, I suppose, by archers, and the arrows thudding into the ground behind them and staying in the ground for 10-15 seconds. That, for me, is really fulfilling. And it's also really interesting because obviously it's this tiny fine detail when the rest of the game is in that low poly art style, which so many people associate a bit like pixel art with low effort when it isn't.
No, it really isn't. Anyway, let's move on. You've got this noticed down as probably the biggest deal of the event, Dan, and this is Extinction. Now,
yeah,
I don't think I saw this. This must have been a Saturday thing for you.
So this was definitely pitched, at least from what I saw, as one of the biggest deals of the entire event. So, Extinction's from Iron Galaxy, who are notorious for their efforts with Sidon Fighters, and also listed as Modus Games, which probably makes some sense. I that's not a name I know, which is a bit odd. Extinction is the easiest or the nearest thing to compare it to is probably Attack on Titan. So I've not seen Attack on Titan.
Nor have I. So it's a good analogy, Dan. Well done.
Yeah. So we're off to a fantastic start. So you're a tiny little person and you run around a village and you save some people by fighting off these little ugly things that aren't orcs. And then this massive thing turns up and it can literally kick in walls and it can just pick up buildings and, well, it doesn't do that in the game, but it's big enough that it can just pick up buildings and smash them into each other. So if you're standing on this big, like, wall that's meant to stop bad things from getting in, it can literally just stick its boot through the wall and you're just flying off everywhere, right? So once you've saved enough people, you get this energy because your character has, you know, the ability to do big devastating things to things, and you gain access to an ability which allows you to slow time, aim a stroke, and then perform the stroke. So a lot of my time was spent on, well, that, because a lot of the game was, the demo was based around that. So these big old troll things, you know, they have armor bolted to them or locked to them or padlocked to them. And so you kind of run up them and you climb them, a bit like Shadow of the Colossus. And then you land these massive sweeping blows which shatter the armor. But then you can cut off the limbs as well. So you kill the enemy by removing the head.
Makes sense.
But, so these big old angry trolls, in the demo they were just the trolls. There are obviously other bad guys and other giants in it. So you might, for instance, run up, smash the armour off of the legs, and then cut both of the feet off. And then it falls down, and it obviously can't go anywhere. So you might smash the armour off of its, you know, arms, and then cut its arms off as well. And until it starts regrowing its limbs, which trolls frustratingly do have a habit of doing, you can just amble up the back. But you don't even need to do that. If you've got the confidence and the timing and the placement, you can just literally just run up the back of this creature anyway, smash the armour off of it, and then just carve its head off. Awesome. Each of the levels that I played were these satisfying little kind of like 4 to 10, depending on how you found the enemy, I suppose, short little bursts as well. So they were kind of like, right, here's another town that's under attack, go save some people, fight some little enemies, get your power up, go and fight this big thing. And it was great that they were in these lovely little chunks. They made you want to play more, even as the challenge got more difficult. Like, we want you to now save 3 enemies that are on the rooftop and save 3 villagers that are on the rooftop and 15 villagers around the town before you go and take out this one giant. And then the next one's like, we want you to save 5 rooftop ones. By the way, the giant is armoured, and, you know, so it was just very nice and bite-sized. That said, it wasn't what I expected. When I went to the event, I had seen, what was it called? Rune? It wasn't Rune, I think it was called. Which is just a survival game where you're naked in the ice and you kill things and then build stuff. And so I was pretty convinced that Extinction, with a name like Extinction, was actually this survival game in an ice age. But no, it was in fact a really exciting and fun, and I guess digestible is probably a good word because it's in those little chunks. Action game, pretty cool.
Coolidge. But you made a reference there to survival games in the snow, which brings us on to Fade to Silence by Black Forest Games and being published by THQ Nordic.
So Black Forest Games previously made a game that I actually quite enjoyed, called Rogue Stormers, which had a bit of a mixed message to it, but was a 2D shooter with roguelike elements. You got a little bit stronger, you fought a boss, you beat the boss, you unlocked new weapons, you unlocked new characters. Very cool, right? So I didn't know what to expect from them when they announced, or when it was announced, that they were doing a big third-person kind of survival, fight evil demons thing, and it was being published by THQ Nordic, because THQ Nordic actually have a really good back catalogue. They've really embraced the THQ stuff that they kind of inherited when they bought that bucket. So I didn't know what to expect, and I've got to say I'm a bit underwhelmed with Fade to Silence.
Well, from what I mentioned to you, from what I saw, it just looked fairly generic. There didn't seem to be anything particularly special about it.
I like the idea that it's this big open world and you're claiming it back from this darkness. I assume this darkness has got something to do with the reason that this is now essentially a post-apocalyptic world, because there are lumps and chunks of technology from modern day and slightly near future littered around. But it's just odd. Things don't quite make sense. It feels like it was missing an intro, or it was missing something else. And what didn't help as well is the fact that the game was actively trying to kill me. And I don't mean that like most games actively try and kill you, but as in like the narrator felt like a bad take on the Darkness's Darkness character. So it was like, oh, suffer, I will destroy you. When you are dead, I will rip you clean, blah, blah, blah. All of the normal, like, villain stuff. Apart from it was then the narrator for the game.
Seems a bit off, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you go to an area where you can hunt, and it's like, right, I know that I need to hunt, because I'm going to need to get bits and bobs, so that I can upgrade my camp. And I can't die too many times, because the game keeps telling me that if I die too many times, it'll reset all of my progress. But everything just felt, I don't know. I'm really mixed on this, because it looked cool. I quite enjoyed the combat, though it was a bit slow. But I think the setting and the narrator gave it a feel of, and I'm not comparing it to the game actually, but Dark Souls. Dark Souls, and I rarely compare games to Dark Souls. Yeah. Dark Souls has an air of hopelessness about it. That's why I don't like it. I like games and I like things where there's a chance that things will improve. Even if at the end of it, it's all just snatched away. You know, I've really enjoyed Spec Ops The Line. I really enjoyed all sorts of things. But there is hope in that. Whereas with Dark Souls, it is devoid of hope. There is a world that has been ruined. It's been ruined 10, 15 times over even, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody that is left is a husk, and literally the enemies that you're fighting actually are husks and the remains of people who did have hope, or people who were consumed by these horrible things, or became these horrible things. And Fade to Silence, from what I saw, was equally hopeless, and I guess I don't have time for that. I mean, it might be that when there's an intro in place, and when we see more of the game, and when you start fighting back, all of a sudden you've got all of these people moving around these bustling, busy areas that you've repopulated. And there's a little bit of hope stirring, and there's a chance to survive. But yeah, the pressure's on you, and the bad guys out there, and it's being miserable. But without knowing that, I don't really know what to say about it. I mean, it looks beautiful. The combat was really cool. But yeah.
Coolies. Next up, we've got Guns of Icarus Alliance, with probably the most overly enthusiastic people there on that particular day.
Wendy is absolutely brilliant.
She seemed a bit nuts, if I'm honest, but cool as well.
No, she is. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with being nuts. But yeah, no, hella enthusiastic. Really passionate about the game. Knows her stuff about it as well. It's literally been elevated from the community. She did a talk about that as well, actually. Elevated from the community directly into the, I suppose the development team, really, as a community manager. and yeah, really knows her stuff. There's nobody better to sell that game to people.
She was definitely putting it out, getting it out there.
And they have a really rich and passionate community as well. I say rich as in like rich of character.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
So Alliance is a PvE take on the previous game, which was just online. The core of it was online, which is included in this, which was PvP. So in online, you used to have a bunch of people on a ship, bunch of people on another ship, fly into space, shoot each other, or not fly into space, fly into, the middle of the map, or maybe not, outmaneuver each other, shoot each other down, boom, 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 bang, bang, bang. So Alliance adds in waves of enemies, and you can have kind of free ships all flying alongside each other, helping each other out, communicating, taking out these enemies, taking out these giant battleships that they have, all helping and communicating. It's just a really, really cool game. Why they were showing it off, obviously, a couple of reasons. One is because it's cool, and it should be shown off at events like this. Yep. But two is because they've managed to get it working on the PS4, and they've managed to get it working on the PS4 cross-compatible with not only PC, but Mac and Linux, which I'm pretty sure...
Hang on. They've cross-compatible as in multiplayer?
Yes.
Sony actually allowed that?
Chat and voice. This is the thing. That's the thing.
Or is this an Epic thing where they've just done it?
It's not running on Unreal. It's running on an adapted Unity.
No, but what I mean is obviously Epic put in that cross play thing without Sony's say so, just to say, well, it can be bloody done. So is that what they've done?
I'm unsure, but they certainly made it clear to Sony when they first started talking to them that what they wanted was to, because they have such a strong community, was to expand their community, not to create a new one. So presumably Sony are very aware of that, and I think that's why this is such a milestone. And like I said, I'm pretty sure, and I know that Muse Games or Wendy was 100%. This is the first time that you've been able to get somebody chatting on a Linux computer to somebody on a PS4 while in the same as a Mac and PC. I mean, that's very impressive. That's extremely impressive.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic game to do it on. I can't wait to see it launch. I can't wait to get that launch date, and I really do hope that they continue to build that community, because it's such a passionate community.
It's out, Dan.
Not on PS4.
Oh, on PS4, no.
No, come on, man. Get with the program. It is out. It is out on PC, and you should give it a go. It would be really cool if we could get a couple of members of B3 on there actually giving it a go. It's the community's really welcoming. I played before with them. Yeah. I've played it through on my own. I've played it with other people I know, and the community's really welcoming. And all of the character classes are built around specialities, but they can all complete each other's jobs as well. So even the repair person can pilot the ship, and even the gunner can repair things and pilot the ship. So there's never any reason why a whole team should be let down by one individual. So that's it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's just obviously those classes are specialised.
Yeah. So it does look gorgeous as well. It looks like a very good looking game.
Looks lovely.
So next up we've got Muddle Dash by Slam Punks and being published by P-Cube. This was this is that 4-player game where you was a piece of slime trying to get a present to a party, wasn't it?
I think they were squids or octopuses. Yeah, I'm gonna speed up talking about games for the rest of this podcast, but Muddle Dash is definitely worth a mention. Such a lovely game, and literally it is just simply 4 people racing to the finish line, and the person who gets there and is holding the present when they get to the door is let in, and everyone has a party, and that is it. So the maps are all vastly different. There's pulleys, levers. Well, there aren't pulleys and levers, but there's spinny things, and there are paddles that flip up and flip down, and you can punch each other, and there's little plants that spit goo at people that freeze them up, and if you're lagging behind, you can just run off the screen and you'll just pop out of the ground ahead of the enemy, and if the present gets left behind, it just appears in front as well, and so it's just happy. It's just a lovely,
it did look absolutely manic, and I
game.
was quite upset we didn't get the chance to play it as a group, because it was busy all day. There was not a time when no one was on that game,
and for good reason. And I really hope that they do well on the Switch. I think they deserve it. Such a great team.
Yeah, definitely on the Switch. So Murderous Pursuit is up next by Blazing Griffin. I watched Sean and Maggie play this. This is a game that's very much like The Ship. If you know that game, The Ship, basically it's set in Victorian England, and you're in a building. It's 8 players at once, and each player will get given a quarry that they've got to kill, and then someone else will be trying to kill them, just like the ship was. But yeah, it was kind of weird. They've got weird little abilities now. So you've got you can press a button, it sends out like a pulse. So you can go boom, boom, and in a certain radius, it will tell you who's who. Like, oh, that's the person I'm looking for. That's the person who's trying to kill me. Blah 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 blah. And you got to try and get away. And also, unlike the ship now, if you die, you will spawn again literally straight away and get given a new quarry, and someone else will be after you as well. So it keeps the pace up, and it looked really, really good.
The ship was very enjoyable, but yes, the respawn, the fact that it wasn't endlessly looping, meant that I didn't continue playing that game, which is a big shame. I ended up gravitating towards the Assassin's Creed multiplayer that they used to have, which I honestly think they should put into the Hitman games, because you just literally dropped back in, and obviously NPCs floating around and merge in, and etc. But
and obviously you mentioned but when we first looked at it, you said, "Oh, it's a bit like the ship." And yeah, that's because half of the development team made the ship as well, which I don't think you were aware of. So I had a little chat to one of the devs there. But yeah, very good little game.
Launching soon as well, I believe. March?
Yes. Yeah, March. It's going to be a busy March from what we heard there, because everyone was going to be coming out in March.
Yes.
It's going to be a busy time. Nippon Marathon by Onion Soup Interactive and published by P-Cube again. This was just a crazy multiplayer sporting game, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was just a running game, basically. You're running and you can jump and you can pick up things and throw them, but it's really just a running game, and that 4 players and you run, and it's crazy. It reminds me very much of the kind of PS1 era, I would say Japanese games, but a lot of games were Japanese, but things like Bishi Bashi Special.
Yes,
and Point Blank, where they had this kind of wackiness, where it was just like shake the can for an hour or shoot all the watermelons, and it just had that kind of craziness to it. And at the same time, it was very reminiscent of Takeshi's Castle, where
it is very Japanese.
Yeah, whereas it just has this lunacy where you kind of jump through a wall, or you've just got to run around this bit and just loop around these cones. But there's loads of dogs here, and they'll chase you down and knock you over, and it was just really fun.
Yeah, it's just mad 4-player multiplayer craziness.
Yeah, and it's on early access now.
Yes, yeah, go and check it out. Next up was Phoenix Point, which has got you rather excited, Dan.
Oh, I've been rather excited by this for a long time. I can't talk about this for too long. So Phoenix Point,
it's a good game. You won.
It's really good, and I beat the demo, didn't I?
You did.
Oh, and that was there are a few things about Phoenix Point that I didn't know going into this, and I was really delighted when I played the game. And for one, the mission briefing was like, "Yep, you're all infected and you're all going to die, so you might as well go out with a big bang, mates." And so that was really cool, because that's ice cold when you compare how people end up treating their survivors in XCOM, etc.
Yeah, well, it kind of puts, because I've never really played XCOM, but what you've described to me is that you can get attached to your characters.
Oh, most certainly.
So putting that in front, saying all these are going to die anyway, you kind of just go, well, I can do what I want. Hooray!
But you'll still, at that point, you'll still have memories of what you achieved with those characters. Secretly, you're kind of hoping they can have their big showdown at the end of the film,
Yeah.
So,
but I'm guessing it would change your playstyle. You wouldn't be as careful as you normally would be. You'd just
Exactly, which is good, because what they don't want is people to, like in XCOM Enemy Unknown, which I know wasn't anything to do with this team, because it was Firaxis' reinvention, but in that, people crawled across the map because there were no timers, which is why Firaxis added in the timer and the stealth mechanics in XCOM 2, because people literally just crept forward from cover to cover. You can't do that in this, because the enemies get smarter, or not get smarter, but they adapt. More melee enemies appear if you keep boxing yourself up. Ranged enemies appear if you keep hiding behind cover. And then obviously there's things like the Queen, name pending, but the big, crab thing that came out and just started smashing through buildings and literally could kill my units in one hit. And my people got completely decimated. And it wasn't just taking damage. And interestingly, you can heal yourself like any turn. It's almost like a free action.
Yeah.
But people were getting, their arms completely shattered, and so they couldn't use their gun. So that's the thing. You ended up pinging it to death with a sniper who couldn't use a sniper rifle, and all he could use is his pistol with his left hand. That's it. And I had written that
it to death in the end.
I had written that guy off as well. I thought, I'll space all of my people out, and 2 of them went down rather
you kind of hidden him at the back, hadn't you? Just kind of, going to do anything, just hide over there. And then all your other people got decimated. You was like, oh well, come on then.
That's it. And then I had the machine gunner, and I thought I can run the machine gunner over here. And then the 2 last crab people were like, whack, whack. And then the pistoliero, the sniper, completely just took them down. And there was like a cheer of like, yeah, well done, behind me. So, of the developers, including Mr. Gollop. So,
yes.
But yeah, so I just really enjoyed it. I didn't know about I should have known, but I've obviously not been paying anywhere near as much attention as I should. But I didn't know that the limb deformation and breaking was going to be that brutal. I knew that on enemies, if you hit them here, then they can't do this. If you hit them there, then they can't do that. Because when these weird Pandora virus enemies are like a strange crab thing that's got a rocket launcher glued to its right arm and a grenade tied to its left leg. So if you can damage its left leg, then it can't do that. And if you can damage the right arm, then it can't do that. So that's very smart, right? That's like deactivating pieces on an enemy mech. But I didn't think that it would also apply to the player characters, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Excellent. So next up we've got Raised or Razed.
I think it's probably pronounced. I believe it's pronounced like Rezzed.
Rezzed. Okay.
Yeah.
By Warpfish and published by P-Cube. This is basically speedrun the game, isn't it? It's just
I was so bad at this.
Like a forward endless runner. So, third person perspective, running along, and you've just got to get to the end as quickly as possible.
Apart from, there are elements that deliberately are easier to best if you slow down. But the problem is, if you're static, if you're not moving, then your health drains. The whole premise of the game is that if you're not moving, then your shoes aren't charging, and if your shoes haven't got charged, then they blow up. There are little energy pips here and there littered about, and if you can slow yourself down sufficiently to keep picking them up in time, you don't have to worry about them running out. But if you do miss them because you're going too fast, or you don't get them all because you're not going quite, accurate enough, then boom, you're out. You have to start again. Now, I wasn't particularly good at this. I did enjoy it, but once again, to mention Dan O'Reilly, he completely smashed this.
Yeah, he was doing really well. He was doing very well at it.
Damn him.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Shift Quantum by Fishing Cactus. This must have been another Saturday one, because I don't remember this.
This was a Saturday job. This was really good. So this is a puzzle platformer. It actually looked a little bit like Exit. Do you remember Exit from the PSP?
Exit was brilliant.
It was
good,
wasn't it?
I was listening to music the other day, because obviously all the Tatio stuff's gone up on Spotify now.
Yeah, that's it, of course.
As an aside, but yeah,
so
carry on.
It felt like that with running and with slowing down. You know, where it felt over-animated?
Yeah. I always used to overshoot things.
Yeah, that's it. So it had that feel to it. But what it was is it's just I would say bog standard. It's a box puzzler like the old DOS days. Apart from the world is black and white, and if you're standing on a substance of the solid colour. So, for instance, if all of the blocks are black and you press one of the buttons, then you punch it, and all of the black blocks become white, and all of the white blocks become black, and the world flips upside down.
Ooh.
So you invert the world, and the world flips.
That sounds interesting.
It is. So you've then got to get to certain points, punch down to go into the blocks, at which point it becomes not an inverted platformer, because you're still platforming, but the map, the level has inverted. So it was a really cleverly made demo, and it was a demo specifically tailored for events that had a really good learning curve in it. But you honestly felt really smart when you spotted the solution, and you could see which block you had to get to because you started seeing the game the other way round. It's really good.
Awesome.
Hard to explain, but very, very good.
So next up, we've got Sure Footing from Table Flip Games. This is I didn't play this, but I watched you play it. It does look like a fairly standard endless runner.
Yeah, I know. That's
not a bad thing though. Endless runners are fun. I was looking at it and I just saw Bit Trip Runner. That's what I saw.
I think
it's good.
That's the biggest problem it's going to face, which is a shame, because actually it's all puns on programming. Like all of the places that you go to, like Landin instead of London, are puns on programming. The whole visual aesthetic is all about programs and chips and this and that, and you also program your character before you go into the game, which is something that most people at that event who walked past wouldn't see. So what happens is you select which abilities you want, which are all puns on programming things and coding things. So you might take a double jump with you, you might take a this and that, and you keybind them beforehand. So you may have a completely different loadout than me, get exactly the same level roundup somehow. But obviously for you it's very different, because you can dash in the air, or you can double jump. Whereas I can, I don't know, do something different. And it was quite interesting. I ended up getting a few quite good scores. There were some instances where I wasn't paying attention because I was getting close to the end of the level, and so kind of fell through silly gaps.
We have to bring up the fact that you got done in by a few bugs as well.
Where I fell through?
Where you looked like you were coming down that ramp way, and then it looked like you should have just gone straight onto the next platform, but you fell off between them. And the guy who was behind us, who was, I don't know whether he's from PR or whatever. I know, he was the actual developer, I think, wasn't he? And he actually apologised and said, "Sorry about that, I need to fix it."
Yeah, so that got me a couple of times. But yeah, that was what I meant. But I guess that's just the way that the levels were put together. But yeah, if that gets fixed before launch, which I think is the end of next month, I think it might not be, then that'll be absolutely fine. I felt like I was getting better at the game as I've gone along, and that's always a good sign. So. And I did mess about with different character setups, so yeah, just see how it goes.
So next we've got two Warhammer games that were there that we saw. So first off is Warhammer Vermintide 2 by Fat Shark.
Okay, so I didn't actually play any of this.
Nor did I.
No, but
shall we skip it?
Well, I quite enjoyed the first one. I don't know if you've played the first one.
I used to play Warhammer, the actual miniatures, when I was younger, but I've never really been into any of the games.
Okay, so Vermintide follows, and we've already mentioned it with one game, but it follows that kind of Left 4 Dead structure, wherein you've got a bunch of cooperative players pushing through a world to get to the end, basically, against increasingly difficult odds. The first one was really good. The second one's looking just as good as well. But the major differences between the first and the second one, other than the fact that it's launching with the heavy loot system that they ended up implementing into the first one, because the first one you just unlocked a couple of extra weapons as you went through. Yeah. But by the time I started playing it, they had a really deep loot system and customization system. So with the second one, not only have they got kind of 5 different playable characters, but I believe that each one, if I remember correctly, has got 3 different careers, meaning that you can play as the dwarf character but specialise as a this, or specialise as a that. And from what I've seen, and I should have checked this out at the event really, I believe that that means that you can all play as, or that multiple of you can play as the same character, but under these different customizations. So essentially, rather than having the 5 characters of the first one, you've essentially got 15 characters to choose from. And obviously different loot trees and skill trees to go with that. So that's pretty cool. But it's just really fun. I mean, it's probably Vermintide, the first one, probably one of the more fun of the Warhammer games that I've played over the many, many years, because Warhammer, as I kind of said about Fade to Silence earlier, is rather a hopeless setting, and sometimes that's just not fun to play. But I enjoyed Vermintide, and Vermintide 2 looks very cool, but we'll have to see more. I believe there's something going up on the site regarding it, which is why we opted to mention it on the podcast, but we'll see.
Okay, cool. And the last one up on our list is Warhammer 40k Gladius. Now, you were with the dev for this for about an hour and a half.
Oh, it was really good.
At this event, you were there for a long time, so I'm guessing you're going to have a lot to say about this.
Mate, it was really good. So I didn't know much about this, even though it's being published by Slytherin, who are obviously, I suppose, a favourite publisher of mine, if you can have such things. I guess I play a lot of Slytherin games, I play a lot of Paradox games, so naturally I guess they kind of sync up to my interests. They're in the right genre for me. So Warhammer 40k Gladius I didn't know too much about. I was quite surprised actually, because it's a 4X game. It's very, very similar, I suppose. As a matter of fact, me and the developer who was there, Rock, we were largely talking in terms of Civilization for the majority of it. So
yeah, from what I saw, it looked very much like a futuristic Civ,
which is absolutely
5 or 6 because it's Hex, isn't it?
Which is absolutely fine, absolutely fine, because it means that it's digestible and approachable, and I suppose, well, actually, yeah, let's go with accessible. Whereas a lot of other kind of heavier wargaming titles or the turn-based tactics games that Slytherin normally put out, they normally have kind of very long turn systems, ridiculously long manuals, all sorts. Whereas Gladius was, pretty damn easy to understand. As a matter of fact, the quest system in it, and which doubles as a tutorial system, was really good at getting you going into the game. Each of the four factions that are in it have their own missions, have their own campaign, which take place on the same map. So there's, not only do you always have the vicious planet that you're playing against and your own missions that you're trying to do on the planet, but you've also got 3 other factions who are actively trying to act out their missions as well, which often contradict or work in the same areas as your own. So it's, I suppose, much more objective driven than Civilization, which can be a good thing. I really enjoyed the game. I was surprised at exactly how much that planet hated me, because literally everything except for one thing, I think, was brutally violent and evil towards me. And I actually avoided that one big floating diamond, which actually, as it turned out, was a bit of a boon, as I was told by the developer, so I should have picked it up, but whatever. But no, it was really cool. I really enjoyed the tech system in it. That felt natural. I was churning out units pretty fast. Units were dying pretty fast as well, but that was probably through my own ineptitude. And yeah, quite looking forward to that. I'm going to be writing up a piece that'll go more into depth than me just going, yeah. And that'll be on the site soon. So
awesome, sounds good. Yeah, while you were with that developer on that Warhammer game, I had a bit of a wander around the place, because it's been a long time since I've been to an event. I think the last one I went to was Eurogamer about 4 years ago, before the current gen of consoles came out.
Was that with me?
No, that was the old site. So I'm doing with Mr. John and Sean.
Oh, I meant, was I there?
No, not at that point. No, because I was...
Was that in Birmingham?
No, it was in London. Was that when you got married?
Oh, yeah, that was my excuse for not going that year.
Yeah, because I had your ticket, basically.
Mate, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago then. There you go.
Yeah.
Craziness. But yeah, there were some interesting things there. There's a big board gaming section with loads of tables playing, with people playing. And a big old area to buy stuff there, which was kind of cool to see. A big retro area. There was a company there. I can't remember what the name of the company was, but they basically build bespoke arcade cabinets for people for their house, which were quite. They seemed a bit steep.
They're called bespoke arcades.
Oh, there you go then. I said the words just in the wrong order. But yeah, we had a bit of a game of Street Fighter, which was fun.
Yeah, you won that.
Yeah, they had a few other games. I played a bit of Sonic. I played a bit of Streets of Rage at one point.
I got annihilated on Red Alert 2, which I was very disappointed at because I bigged myself up.
Jupiter and the Bradley chap.
Yeah, the guy who developed Ruya completely smashed us. Yeah.
But there was a few talks going on, and the whole thing was sponsored by HP, wasn't it? The Omen series.
The Omen brand.
So they had a big stage going on in the middle there with loads of people on. What did I watch? Oh, there was a talk from Jens, for the Minecraft developer.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because he was there because of Cobalt WASD, which is, I think, the second PC release of that game. It's a bit of a weird history there, but he was there talking about the future of Minecraft and the new Aquatic update. Managed to get a picture with him. It was quite exciting.
It was a really good event. I really like the PC Gamer Weekenders. They remind me of the early Eurogamers, pre-big crowds. And I
remember Eurogamer was ridiculously busy when I went there.
I went to last year's Eurogamer EGX, I think they call it now, just to try and distance it from the website. But I went to last year's, which was up in Birmingham, and it was actually a lot tamer than it used to be when it was down in Earl's Court. Yeah. I don't know whether it's where they're more spaced out, but it used to be, I think the last one that I went to in London, you had to wait at junctions because there were so many people in there that you couldn't get around. You needed to wait until there were kind of 3 or 4 people with you so you could push through and break the flow of people. Whereas in Birmingham it was much more spaced out and better managed, I guess, really. But PC Gamer Weekend I do sorely enjoy, and I think each year that I've been it has got busier, but then each year that I've been they've also got a lot better at organising it. I look forward to going to next year's, and I do hope that they continue expanding the selection of games that they're.
Yeah, I must admit, I do wish I'd played a bit more, but I'm very funny about having people looking over my shoulder when I'm playing games, especially if that's the game's developer.
Yeah, I was the same as that, to be honest. It took a lot of events before I didn't spend the first kind of 40% of the event just skulking around not playing anything, so yeah. I'm sure you'll get there.
But no, it was fun. It was fun. I did enjoy it.
Tidy.
It's good to see. But I think that brings us to the end of this special, a bit longer podcast than recent times, but there was a lot of stuff to go through.
There was.
If you've watched it on YouTube, you've seen some funky footage from the event that was taken while we were there, so that's a bit of a bonus for you chaps. If you're listening on other systems, like iTunes and such, if you pop over to YouTube, you can see bits of footage and things. So give some visuals for your eyes.
There you go.
And you can listen to us talk again. So that's all good, isn't it? So with that, I shall bid you adieu and say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.